Welcome to part 2 of our angle relationships video. As you recall, previously we went over the different types of angles, definitions, and did a little bit of work with those. We looked at corresponding angles, alternate interior angles, alternate exterior angles, same side interior angles. We also took a look at complementary angles, supplementary angles, adjacent angles, linear pairs, as well as vertical angles. So our approach for this video is going to be looking at angle relationships, identifying different ones, and ultimately using algebra to solve and find measures of different angles. So let's go ahead and start with that right away here today. Alright, so just a couple of pieces of information that we are going to clear up before we start working with a few of these examples. So the first ones we're going to look at are complementary, supplementary, same side interior, and same side exterior. Now these are angle relationships that add either up to 90 degrees or 180 degrees. And let's just go ahead and identify which ones are which. So complementary, those add to 90 degrees. Supplementary add to 180 degrees. Same side interior add up to 180 degrees. And same side exterior also add up to 180 degrees. So really the only odd one out here is the complementary angles, which add up to 90 degrees. We have four other relationships that are a little bit different, and angle relationships that are congruent or equal to one another are vertical angles, corresponding angles, alternate interior angles, and alternate exterior angles. And like I said, we're going to use algebra to find measures of the different angles for these different types of angle relationships. So as you see inside, there are, zoom out here real quick, there are 8 examples that are within this little foldable here. So 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. I'm going to do 2 examples from each side, and then I'm going to have you try 2 examples as well on your own, just to make sure that you have the hang of this idea, topic, whatever you want to call it. So first and foremost, let's start under the flap of angle relationships that add to 90 degrees or 180 degrees. Alright. So I'm going to do the first example in here as well as the fourth example, because the fourth example is one that we really haven't talked about too much. So we'll go ahead and work with that one together, and then you'll have to do the second example and the third example in here and check those. So let's go ahead and start with our first one here. So before we can do any algebra with this, we're really going to have to look at what angle relationship is here. So what I see is we have values here and here that we don't know. We have 3x and 7x, and it looks like that it's just adding up to 90 degrees. So if we remember back to our foldable from yesterday, our definitions, you may want to refer back to those. It looks like we're looking for a 90-degree angle, so that means these are complementary. So complementary angles. So they're probably nice to each other. So they might be saying, "You're a cute angle." "Oh, thanks. You're a cute angle too." They complement each other. So let's go ahead and work through this one then. So if they're adding up to 90 degrees, we want this angle plus this angle to add up to 90. So we would have 3x plus 7x equals 90. Combine like terms here. This is all things that we've done in the past with solving equations, so it's just taking it to another level applying it to geometry. 10x equals 90. In order to get x by itself, we must divide by 10. So x is equal to 9. And we can find the measure of both of these angles and make sure that they add up to 90 degrees. If they do, we're good to go. So 7 times 9 is 63, so this is a 63 degree angle. And 3 times 9 is 27, so 27 degree angle. So 27 plus 63 is 90. Because we'd have 20 plus 60 is 80, 7 plus 3 is 10, so they add up to the correct measures. So that's a complementary angle, adding up to 90. I'm going to have you do example 2 and 3 here. We're going to work through number 4 together. Zoom in a bit here. Now, we have to identify the type of angles first. So I'm noticing that these are both on the outside. So that must mean, because it's going to be one of 4 of these that are on the outside of this flap here. If they're on the outside, that means they're exterior, so they must be same side exterior angles. And we see that those add up to 180 degrees. So that's a lot of information for us there to work with and enough for us to solve for these missing angle measures. So like I said, this is same side exterior. Same side exterior angles. And like I said, those add up to 180 degrees. So that means we're going to take this expression of 11x plus 4 and this expression of 3x plus 8. We're going to add those together and set them equal to 180 degrees. So we should have 11x plus 4 plus 3x plus 8 equals 180 degrees. Solving equations here, so combining like terms, combining constants, so 4 and 8, and then ultimately doing a two-step equation to solve that. So 11x plus 3x is 14x. 4 plus 8 is 12, and that's equal to 180. So we're going to have to subtract 12. Subtract 12. We'd have 14x equals 180 minus 12 is 168. And then divide by 14, divide by 14 is 12. Now we're going to have to plug these in and find the measure of these angles, and whatever we find, this angle here, so GFH, and the angle CBD should add up to 180 degrees since they are supplementary. They're same side exterior, but they're also supplementary angles. So I'm just going to work down here a little bit. So 11 times 12 plus 4 that's 136. So this angle is 136 degrees. And that looks right because this looks like an obtuse angle here. And if we do 3 times 12 plus 8, we get 36 plus 8, so what is that, 44? So 136 plus 44, and if we did everything correctly, this should be 180, which it is. So we know that the x value of 12 that we found is correct here. So what I would like you to do is go through example 3 and example 2 on your own. Identify what the x is and find the measure of both angles. So go ahead and pause the video here and try those, and then I will show you what the answers are. Alright, you should have tried both of these problems, and this problem number 2 here After identifying the angles, you should have come up with supplementary angles for this one. Your x value that you found should have been x equals 7. And if we would plug those into each of those angles, 19 times 7 plus 5 is 138 degrees for this angle. And 7 times 6, 42, sorry. 42 degrees here. 138 plus 42 is 180, so that works out there. And then problem number 3 would be same side interior angles, because they're on the same side and they're inside. Same side interior. And again, those add up to 180 degrees. So the value of x that you should have found is x equals 13. And if we plug that in for those values, or substitute 13 in for x, I should say, I should get 140 for this angle down here. And then 3 times 13 is 39. So that means plus 1 should be 40 degrees for that angle. Those add up to 180. If you got both of those, you're in business and good to go. So those are angles that add up to either angle relationships that add up to 90 or 180 degrees. Next, I want to take a look at angle relationships that are congruent. Those are vertical, corresponding, alternate interior, and alternate exterior. So just like we did before, I am going to do 2 of these examples, and then I'm going to have you do 2 of these examples. Now all these ones are congruent, so we're going to be setting everything equal to each other. We're just going to have to make sure we're identifying our angles correctly. I think that I am going to do problem number 1 and problem number 4 again, so that you will be left with 2 and 3. So let's start with 1 up top, and identifying the type of angles first. So these types of angles, if they're basically across from one another, if you remember back to our foldable from yesterday, vertical angles, right? They are opposite angles from each other, so that means they're vertical. So say vertical angles. And since they're congruent, we'll set them equal to one another and ultimately plug that value of x in that we find and see what the measure of these angles are. And they should be the same because they're congruent. So we have 7x plus 15 equals 10x minus 42. First thing I'm going to do is subtract 7x to the right-hand side. Those will cancel out. I'll have 15 equals 3x minus 42. I'm going to add 42 to both sides. So 15 plus 42 is not a number that I like. Let's see, did I do something incorrectly here? 7x plus 15 equals 10x minus 42. So I'd have 15 left if I would subtract 7. 10 minus 7 is 3. That should be right. Let's see what happens here though. Oh, okay, so this does work out. 57 equals 3x. I just didn't like 57. Didn't seem like a number that divides evenly. So just checking my work there, making sure it makes sense. And this would be x equals 19. So if we plug 19 in for each of these, so 7 times 19 plus 15 more would give me 148 degrees. Oop, not 1,480. 148 degrees. And since these are vertical angles, these should be the same. So if I put 19 in here, 10 times 19 minus 42 gives me 148. So we're in business. Those are vertical angles. And we just checked that algebraically. So number 2, I'm going to leave for you to do. Number 3, I'm going to leave for you to do. And we will work on number 4 together here. So our options on the front page are vertical, corresponding, alternate interior, and alternate exterior. So looking at these angles, they look like they're both on the outside and they're on opposite sides. So that must make them alternate exterior angles. I'll just say alternate exterior, since we know their angles. And again, these are equivalent to each other. So we're going to do the same thing we did with vertical angles. We're going to say 10x plus 22 is equal to 12x plus 4. Going to take the same approach here, get all my x's to one side, get all my constants to one side, divide by whatever's in front of x, and hopefully that gets x alone and gives us a value for it that we can substitute back in. So minus 10x, that's gone. 22 equals 2x plus 4. We will subtract 4. It's going to leave me with 18. Divide by 2. X is going to equal 9. We'll take this 9 and substitute it in for x in each of these expressions here. So let's do the 12x plus 4. So 12 times 9 plus 4 is 112 degrees. And since these are alternate exterior, they should be the same measure. But just to check, let's plug in the value, substitute the value I should say, and make sure that angle comes out to 112. So 10 times 9 plus 22 more would be 112. So we would have 90 plus 22 plus another 10 would be 100, plus another 10 would be 110, plus 2 more is 112. So those two work out nicely there. So at this time, what I would do is pause the video and work through example 2 as well as example 3. All right, you should have taken the time to do example 2 and 3. So let's go ahead and identify the correct type of angle, the value of x, and then what the measure of each of those angles is. So these ones here are corresponding angles because they're in the same position on the same side. So those are corresponding. And again, those follow the definition from this foldable here. Two angles that lie on the same side of the transversal in corresponding positions. So definitions are important, like I've mentioned earlier in the first video. The value of x that you should get on this one, after setting these equal to each other since they're congruent, x is equal to 9. And when you plug in the values, the value of 9, I should say, in for x, you should get 120 degrees for both of these angles. Hopefully you got that. If you didn't, I'd go back and check your work. And if you're still stuck, then please ask me a question. And finally, this example here. These are inside. They're opposite of each other, so alternate. That means these are alternate interior. The value of x that you should get for these when you set them equal to one another and solve for x is x equals 6. And the measure of those angles, when you substitute 6 in for x, you should get 40 degrees for both of those. And I will write that out here as well, 40 degrees. Same thing from the one above, just in case it's hard to see, this should have been 120 degrees. So, those are our angle relationships and using algebra to solve those. So this should go into your notebook as well as this foldable from yesterday and this foldable. So we have 3 foldables for our angle relationships section of this geometry unit. Make sure those get into your notebook so that you can refer to them whenever working with this topic. And as just a recap, like always, let's go back to our I can statements. So today we worked with angle relationships. One standard we worked with is I can identify complementary, supplementary, vertical, adjacent, and congruent angles. And I can find measures of complementary, supplementary, vertical, and adjacent angles. That was everything that we've covered today. So hopefully after watching this video, you have a better understanding of the different types of relationships, as well as how to find missing measures of angles. If you have any further questions, please go back and watch the video, or you can always ask me.